Well, welcome everyone once again to our CAPE training program. My name is John Leatherman. I'm located at Kansas State University. My partners in this project include Mark Skidmore, Director of the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development, Rosa Solis McKelvey, who is Communication and Logistics Coordinator at the Center, Paula Miller, who is our CAPE Postdoctoral Fellow, and I should acknowledge a number of others who have contributed to our program thus far. First of all, CAPE stands for Community Assessment and Education to Promote Behavioral Health Planning and Evaluation. It's a co-sponsored production by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA Regional Rural Development Centers. The partnership is intended to identify and disseminate more effective response strategies to the challenges of mental illness and substance abuse within our communities. Our training objectives are twofold. It is first of all to enhance behavioral health literacy and hopefully reduce the stigma associated with mental health problems within our communities. And we've utilized the mental health first aid training program that all of you have participated in. Our second primary objective is to create and sustain community coalitions capable of addressing behavioral health challenges. And to accomplish this objective, we are engaged in this training program talking about the development of community-scale initiatives that can address behavioral health issues. Finally, we'll be talking about community action planning, and you will have the opportunity to present your ideas with regard to a behavioral health initiative you'd like to undertake within your community. Today we're going to be talking about engaging the community and building community consensus, and from there we'll go on to talking about strategic action planning, and finally we will meet once again at a point about 6 months following completion of our training program to see how things are going within the communities that you work. Our session today will include discussion of organizing effective public meetings. We'll talk about establishing community priorities, and I'll present one model that I like to use that I call facilitated small group discussion that can allow us to achieve consensus on the issues within our community. So first of all, looking at effective public events. Public events and meetings are needed if in circumstances where we'd like to create awareness and enhance knowledge about an issue, perhaps to build public support and momentum to achieve some sort of a community goal, to recruit allies and supporters for an issue. Public meetings are appropriate to build consensus around broader community priorities, to mobilize supporters and strategize about action, to report back to the community the progress that has been achieved, and finally to celebrate success and reinforce momentum in and around a project. The elements of organization is it helps, first of all, to have a respected community leader to issue the invitations, someone who has some gravitas and sway within the community and who will be respected when they say this is an important issue to pay attention to and participate in. We need a facilitator who can do the local work necessary to organize the meeting, issue the invitations, and make sure everything is at the ready. It's helpful also to have a core group of supporters who can help and endorse the effort. It helps when a number of community leaders are saying that they intend to participate because it's an important issue. We need a space and time conducive for professional presentations and effective work, and I can attest to that because I've worked in any number of places within rural communities, many of which were quite unsuitable for actually accomplishing the task at hand. And so it does pay attention to making sure that the meeting location and the setup is conducive to accomplishing the objectives of the meeting. We need to ask ourselves whether we've targeted the appropriate people to participate within our meeting. We have to ask ourselves in the ideal who should be in the room as we're discussing these issues. And then finally, we need to build out an appropriate contact distribution list by way of individuals, by way of their professional position. We need to obtain email, contact information, addresses, telephone numbers, and the like. I think that it's always important to have a very carefully thought out program plan with clear goals and objectives to accomplish, an agenda that can be followed, that people can see. I would suggest that in any given meeting, we limit what is to be accomplished and not try to do too much at one time so that people can do a good job focusing on the issue at hand. We want to make our meetings brief and easy to participate in, and we want to respect our participants' time. If we tell them the meeting is going to be 60 minutes or 90 minutes, we need to respect that and make sure that we get our work done within the time frame necessary. It's always helpful when we're looking at organizing a meeting to have some sort of a hook that can make people care about the issue that we want to be able to deal with. Sometimes it can be helpful to bring in an outside expert, and frequently I'm called upon because I live greater than 50 miles from the community, and somehow that makes a difference. It's always helpful to have incentives to participate, such as refreshments, perhaps a meal service, and that will make people feel more welcome. Nothing substitutes for a personal invitation to come to a meeting. And indeed, it's always very helpful to reach out to the individuals who are key stakeholders to an issue and make sure that we are asking them personally to come and securing their commitment. I think that it's appropriate to issue formal invitations, and it's not a waste of money to actually send out a letter that notifies the individual of the meeting, shares with them the agenda, and formalizes the invitation. And finally, last-minute reminders are also very important, frequently just simply by way of an email reminder the day before that the meeting is scheduled for tomorrow, and we appreciate their participation. In general, nothing really substitutes for beating the bushes if you want to get people to come out and pay attention to what you're trying to accomplish. Let's talk for a few moments about establishing community priorities. Indeed, there are any number of public participation techniques that are available for use depending on what you would like to accomplish. And while I haven't yet identified what I feel is an excellent self-study resource, I would perhaps recommend visiting the website for the International Association for Public Participation. They identify a number of techniques that can accomplish various kinds of meeting objectives, techniques that can share information such as briefings, expert panels, feature stories, information repositories, techniques to compile and provide feedback such as surveys, interviews, Delphi process, techniques that can bring people together such as appreciative inquiry, deliberative techniques, focus groups, and so forth. And then finally, techniques for group decision making such as the nominal group process, various types of consensus techniques. Now, when I first started in this business, I was taught to utilize the nominal group process, and many of you are very familiar with that. That's the idea of soliciting input from an audience, writing it on big tear sheets, pasting them on the wall, discussing them for a time, and then having people vote for their first, second, third priority. It tends to be a very democratic process, and it tends to be very clear and objective with regard to what is the first, second, and third priority. But I myself have moved away from the use of that, despite its democratic nature, insofar as I found that it tends to leave some people out. Not everybody is going to be in the first, second, or third priority. And there will be people who feel that their issue may be very, very important, who could walk away feeling disaffected by the process because their issue was not recognized as being a priority. And so now what I try to do more often than not is utilize a consensus process, one where everybody is included, one where everybody can participate in feeling as though they are part of the priority. And I'll share with you a model that I've come to use over time, and I'm sure that I've drawn on any number of sources for the ideas behind this. But here is what I like to do when we are dealing with a community process that is intended to establish community priorities for future action and initiative. First of all, I thank the participants for their important work that they've been doing on behalf of the community. I restate the purpose of the project and, outline what we need to accomplish in this given meeting. I review our progress to date, the steps that we've taken, the information that we've reviewed, the preliminary conclusions we've drawn. And then we move into a process of small group discussion. And to do so, what I typically will do is recruit small group facilitators before the meeting and make sure that they are at the ready to volunteer to lead a given group discussion. We have to have the room appropriately arranged for effective discussion in small groups. Generally speaking, groups of 6 to 8 individuals is ideal to allow everybody an opportunity to contribute within a limited time frame. Then what I like to do is mix people up, because people will tend to come to a meeting with a colleague or a friend, a person perhaps with a like mind, and they sit together. And the best ideas will come out of a discussion that has diversity associated with it. And so I literally, depending on how many groups I anticipate having by way of the size of the audience, as I make them count off, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then they get assigned to a given discussion group. That mixes everyone up. Once at the table, we recruit a group recorder, an individual who's going to take notes of the discussion of the group. That is essential for me later on as I try to summarize the scope and the nature of the priorities that we are going to pursue. And generally speaking, you will always be able to find an individual who is willing to serve as a group recorder. Then we lay out the question to be answered. What is the priority with regard to community behavioral health issues or initiatives, or whatever it may be, whether it's our economic development priorities, our general health priorities, or whatever it may be. The question that we are trying to answer at this time is, what is the priority? People will have a tendency of allowing consideration of what we have to do in order to accomplish that priority. Right now, we are just focusing on what is the priority. How we accomplish the priority actually comes a bit later. I will remind the group that it's always appropriate and I think desirable to establish discrete and achievable goals. And that is to say, don't think too big, too broadly about accomplishing too much. We have to focus on what is within local control, what do we have the resources sufficient to accomplish. I encourage people to avoid very global goals. If they come up with a priority or a goal of eliminating government regulation or eliminating Obamacare, these are things that are not generally within the control of the community. And so if those are the types of priorities people establish, they're going to be disappointed in the long run when they see the limited effect that they're going to have. Rather, discrete, achievable goals that are within local control. And then I lay out the rules for the discussion. And indeed, we have a certain limited amount of time that we can dedicate, so I identify the time limits, the progress that needs to be made within the first 30 minutes, the first 50 minutes, and then perhaps concluding at 60 minutes. The facilitator's job is to lead the discussion, is to keep everything on time, make sure everyone speaks, and make sure no one dominates the discussion. The recorder is intended to capture everyone's thoughts as they express them so that nothing is lost. We go in a round-robin fashion where everybody has a chance to offer their thoughts and ideas on priorities and have a brief opportunity to discuss that. And then at a given point, I will suggest that now is the time for the group to decide what are the 2 or 3 things that they can all agree on are priorities. And when the time is up, I'll ask them to report back to the group the 2, 3, 4 things that their group all agreed were priorities that they can all buy into. And actually, that's the point where I have to go to work, because we solicit the thoughts of each of the respective small groups. And what I do is I'll scribble notes like mad while they're making their report. Once they've finished their report, I repeat it back to them so that they're assured that I heard them correctly and accurately. And then what I do is go through a process of looking for the commonalities across all of the different group reports. And I start grouping things by way of theme. And ultimately, I can usually come up with 2, 3, or 4 broad themes within which everything can be subsumed. And I will ask the question, can we all agree that pursuit of health, wellness, and chronic disease prevention is a priority within our community? Everybody can agree to that. But with such a broad priority, a lot of stuff can be incorporated into that one priority. We do this until we have anywhere from 1 to 3 goal statements perhaps, and secure consensus among everybody in the room that they can all agree that these are the 1, 2, 3 most important priorities to pursue. Thereafter, I go back, I get those notes, and I'm able to incorporate pretty much everything everyone has suggested was important in their own view. Next is, how are we going to accomplish the priority? And this is where, even at the point of having identified the priority, I begin the process of securing commitments to essentially figure out how we're going to get these things done. That's where we move into the community action planning component of our process. I'll ask for commitments and I'll ask for specific follow-up, people who will give thought to exactly what needs to happen in order to accomplish that priority. And I begin the process of preparing for planning and the next steps to follow, which is indeed the community action planning. And that's going to be really the focus of our last video together, is the community action planning. So what's next is essentially we will discuss, we'll continue this process of building community consensus and action planning. We'll talk about sustaining the initiative, metrics to measure our progress in achieving our goals, creating the strategic action plan, and we'll wrap up with a brief discussion of broader community needs assessment. So with that, here is our contact information again. You can see contact information for myself, for Mark, for Rosa. If you feel that you would like to discuss anything that we've talked about here today, or if you'd like to discuss your own community action plans and would like to get some feedback and input, you're welcome to contact me and I'll try to help you the best I can. And so with that, we'll wrap up, and I'll see you in our final training video next time. Thank you very much.